y'all, it's Rose Gold Empathy, and welcome to the 5th episode of the first season of the Roses with Empathy podcast series. So, welcome back, y'all. I'm glad to be here, ready to talk with y'all, and today we're going to talk about romantic relationships specifically. So, in the past few episodes, I've talked, from the sort of standpoint of romantic and familial relationships, and I still haven't touched on platonic or, sexual or like sort of workplace relationships or anything like that yet, but everything will come in due time, trust me. So today we're going to focus on romantic relationships specifically and talk about, what ruins these types of relationships? What can sabotage a relationship? And honestly, I think that there are so many reasons why relationships can be sabotaged by us, and many of which we aren't even aware of until after the damage has already been done and, our precious hearts are left in the rubble. But for the purpose of this episode, I'm going to discuss just 3 things that I think are capable of really ruining relationships. And I'll also discuss one thing that has been said to ruin relationships that I don't really see as, a problem. Of course, I'll also touch on what I feel are ways to prevent these things from ruining your relationship and, how to even resolve things once the relationship has already been ruined. And I do want to note again that I am in no way a licensed relationship expert or advisor or anything like that. I'm just here as a Black queer woman presenting my views based on my anecdotal experiences. So if you and your partner are in an unhealthy relationship, I really encourage y'all to, get some counseling. Like, there's nothing wrong with getting counseling or having a third party to mediate some of your issues, especially if you love this person. So 2 good resources I recommend are 7cups.com and betterhelp.com. And you can reach out to these online therapy platforms for more assistance. So before we get started in the topic, if you don't mind, please follow me on Instagram at _rosegoldempathy. So this is really my official page where all of my other outlets such as YouTube, SoundCloud, and Amazon are linked. And my link tree is in my bio as well. So I hope everything is easily accessible for y'all and y'all can find me when you need me. So again, that's at _rosegoldempathy on Instagram. Thanks for y'all's support. So let's take a quick break. And when we come back, it's time to unruin some relationships. Soft to me. Got so many punchlines for like a club promoter or a party hoster. You always getting bread, that's why you got the toaster. Okay. I love with a flame, why'd you let it smolder? Why? Life be hitting hard, hitting like a boulder. Ouch. Hurting like a shard, I'm only getting older. Yeah. They say you so young, I'm only getting older. Yeah. But I can never quit, something like a soldier. Yeah. I think you a cop the way you always said he stopping me. Why you wanna argue, baby? I just wanna find a peace. Life is what you make it, so I chose to make you part of me. Why you choose to pardon me? You just getting started, see? Feel like Moses, I'm seeing part of seas. Yeah. Look me in my eyes, say you don't. Cool, y'all. Welcome back. So the song you was just listening to is called Trippin', and it's by me, Rose Gold Empathy. And, it's less politically or historically conscious as like the previous songs I've sort of sampled on the show. However, I'm a very versatile artist. So each song I sort of put out is different from the last. Or in the EPs, it's like a set of the same songs. Same with my mixtapes, like the same genre of songs. But, I don't like to stick to one style for too long because I feel like it inhibits my creativity. So that's why you may have listened to that and been like, that sounds really different from the boom bap type songs she had on the last show. But, it's called Trippin', and nevertheless, the purpose of the song is to sort of shed light on the struggles of relationships, which I think is very fitting, and that's why I chose it for today, because today we're talking all about relationships. So if you like what you hear and want to hear more, you can find me on SoundCloud and YouTube at Rose Gold Empathy, or you can just follow me on Instagram, where you can get all of my links in my bio in one compiled list at _Rose Gold Empathy on Instagram. Again, thank y'all so much for y'all support. All right, y'all. So let's get started. Roses, I know this is the moment we've all been waiting for. So what kinds of things ruin romantic relationships? It's a big question, an even larger topic. So I think first we must explore what it means for something to be ruined, because, really it's one thing to say and to ask, like, what ruins a relationship? And it's another thing to ask, what makes a relationship good, or what makes a relationship toxic, and etc., So I think this really shows that the words that we use to describe the sort of phenomena in our life will really determine how we deal with said phenomena. You know what I mean? So let's look at what ruin means first. So most dictionaries define this word ruin as to damage something so badly that it's no longer useful, valuable, or enjoyable. And, I think this definition is very fitting, and I want us to use it for the purpose of today's episode. So if you're in a relationship and you or your partner does something to ruin it, this something will vary from relationship to relationship because, not everyone sees certain actions or experiences as inherently toxic or capable of, ruining a healthy relationship. But I do think it's clear that, when we see people who stay with their disloyal partner, even after evidence has been given of, the partner's disloyalty, we can see that people really do have different conceptions of what makes a relationship ruined. So for this reason, I chose 3 things that I personally think are more likely to be sort of commonly agreed upon by the vast majority, aka the roses here in this beautiful podcast. So here's how we finna do this. We're finna take a quick break again, and when we come back, I'm going to break everything down in this way. So firstly, I'm going to list the thing that I think ruins relationships. Then I'm going to explain why I think the problem exists, like what is the problem founded on and rooted in. And then I'm going to offer a way to prevent this problem from ruining your relationships or, even how you can resolve something after the relationship has been ruined in a sense, right? Lastly, I'm going to consider any rebuttals to my solutions, and I will also at the very end, the tail end, really discuss one thing that I've heard ruins relationships that I don't necessarily agree with or see as, such a big problem. So I'm going to make my own rebuttal to that sort of one thing, and then we'll wrap it up from there, y'all. So I'm see y'all in a few, and you know what to do. Rose go. Hey y'all, so welcome back, roses. So let's just jump right into it. So perhaps the biggest killer to a healthy relationship is a problem in sort of toxic communication and, more importantly, toxic comprehension. Personally, I see a lot of posts on Instagram saying that if it ain't no communication in a relationship or something like this, then the relationship not finna work, right? And while I agree with this, I would also add that without the open sort of comprehension of any communication, a relationship will fail also. I think that communication and comprehension go hand in hand, and the comprehension aspect is usually overlooked when this topic is brought up, I feel like. But it's if you arguing with your girl or your guy, and they communicating something to you without even clarifying if what they're arguing for is actually comprehensible by you, then it's not just the communication that's the issue here. It's also the comprehension. You feel me? So you can try and explain to someone something that you're passionate about all day long till you're out of breath and sweat it out and all of that. But if what you're trying to communicate isn't comprehensible by your audience, then you never gonna catch your breath and you gonna keep sweating. Trust me. So on that note, I do want to sort of explore why it is that certain styles of communication are incompatible with each other. And it seems clear to me, at least, that there are various communication styles generally. And these styles are distinguished by 2 things, like the channels in which the communication is produced through, and also the style and purpose of said communication. So just to list some off, the 2 main categories of communication channels are verbal communication and nonverbal communication. So of course, this is actually talk speech versus body language or something like this. You know what I mean? And within the sort of verbal communication category, we have written and oral communication. So this seems clear enough to me. Within oral communication, though, there's also face-to-face and distance communication, which may be new to some of you. But still, this also seems intuitive. If you're talking to someone orally, you can either be face-to-face or from a distance, right? As it relates to the sort of style and purposes of communication, we also have two main categories, which are formal and informal communication. So, by the way, like all of this information I'm giving you can be found on the internet with ease. You can type in like communication styles or something like this. Like this is what I did. So the breakdown of these different styles of communication is not my own, and I'm just adding my own input and fluff to what has already been made available to us. I just want to make that clear. So in any case, let's move forward. So now that we've sort of like established the different communication channels and styles and purposes of the ways of communication, we can sort of see how certain conflicts can arise when we engage with someone who communicates differently than we do, right? So like, for example, as it relates to verbal and nonverbal communication, I know for myself personally, when I was in a certain romantic relationship with my partner, my ex, she would be really upset because every time we had a disagreement, I would want to talk it out right then and there, either over the phone or in person or something like this. Like, remember, face to face versus distance, right? However, she wanted to text. And when I say over the phone, I mean during a call or a video call, right? Like not through text, but she wanted to text it out when, when she was ready, really. So that could even be days after the fact. So honestly, there's really two aspects to this. But for now, let's just focus on this idea that, we disagreed a lot because my style of communication was verbal and oral. And my ex's was also verbal, but written, really. So it already seems clear that our communication styles were really different in this sense. So, my ex and I had the same sort of communication channel, but we differed in how our communication moves through this channel. You know what I mean? So, and this is not to say that this difference is the only thing that led to our demise, in any sense. Matter of fact, let me just say, like, just because someone's communication style is different from yours doesn't automatically mean that your relationship is going to be ruined. Like today, I'm just here to show how these differences can lead to issues if not clarified and fully comprehended by either party in any relationship. You dig? So to add to this though, like some people have different communication styles when they are arguing with their partner versus when they aren't arguing. And that's really crazy in and of itself. So like when we think about communication and comprehension, not only do we need to think about like how we can effectively communicate and comprehend in the context of like disagreements and arguments, but also on a non-confrontational level, like just how we communicate each day, whether there's a disagreement or not, So as it relates to disagreements though, and arguments, and this is like probably the most commonly talked about aspect of it, there are also a few different ways partners can communicate with each other during arguments. So I'm going to list those out. And then I'm going to go back and sort of explain each one. So validation, volatile, conflict avoiding, hostile, and adaptable. So these are all, just a few different various ways that people can communicate with their partner when they are upset about something. But usually, like, I think it's more likely that someone is through and through this type of communicator, but it depends. So we're going to get into that. So let's start with validation. So a person with a sort of validating communication style will strive to make their partner feel validated and understood during a disagreement. So they'll say things like, yeah, you feel me? I hear you. I feel it. Like, that sounds really frustrating. And what you're saying is valid. This has its pros and cons, but I'm less focused on the pros and cons of each one and more so just getting that information out there, sort of like as a starting point. So we have validation. We also have volatile. So a person with a volatile communication style will not be content really unless there's some sort of rockiness and uncontrollableness to their relationship. It's a sort of unpredictability. Maybe some people put it under the guise of spontaneity, but really these are the same people that pride themselves in being quote unquote crazy. And that speaks for itself. I'm not going to get into that. That's another topic. But maybe while they're arguing, this person will throw a wild card and do something that will get a crazy reaction from their partner. And to be honest, I'm going to keep it so 1,000 with you. Like, I think people with this style cannot be in a relationship without some sort of self-sabotaging because they thrive off of like chaos and the volatility. You know what I mean? So we also have conflict avoiding. So this style feels a bit more straightforward, but just in case something's unclear, I'm going to sort of say that it's basically when someone, will sort of maybe suppress how they truly feel about an issue to avoid confronting or being confronted about said issue with their partner. And, also this person may be sort of recluse and like withdrawn when it's actually time to discuss the issue at hand. Like they don't want no beef. You feel me? After that, we got like hostile. So hostile seems a little bit close to the volatile in some ways, but volatility refers more to like the way in which things happen rapidly and unexpectedly. So whereas a hostile communicator may always just be on the defense or the offense even, and doesn't really want to find a solution. They think they do, but they don't. And they just rather make it be known that they have a problem with something that is being made to be a problem. That's sort of like what the hostile vibe is about. The last one I mentioned, I sort of added myself because I feel like it may resonate with people the most. I think that an adaptable communicator is one who's able to adjust and compromise to a certain degree. The way in which they communicate with someone sort of varies. It's depending on like, they're really, it's hard to explain, but I see an adaptable communicator as sort of I'll meet you where you are type person, while still never compromising my own internal, like, I don't know, strong moral code or something. Like maybe an adaptable person will argue with someone who is hostile and likes to yell, right? But at the same time, they're not going to yell back, but they're not going to expect their soft-spoken words to make a real dent. Like they're going to sort of meet the person where they're at without stooping to their level. And maybe there's no distinction that's really being made here, but the best way I can explain this is like, okay, let's say I'm talking to a hostile communicator and they're yelling at me and taunting me and making, straw man arguments and ad hominem attacks, right, at my character instead of at the issue. And me, I'm an adaptable communicator, and I say to them like, how I feel in a way that I would normally say it, like my default way of arguing. I would just say, these are the facts. I'm not going to start yelling, but these are the facts, da 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 da. And maybe that it's just like you're talking to a brick wall at this point. That's not going to work. So me as an adapter, I'm going to go like, boom, boom, boom. Okay, so this is what this person needs. I'm not going to start yelling, but I am going to sort of raise the tone of my words so that it can sort of cut through that sort of trance-like rage that they have. You know what I mean? So that's what I mean by like an adaptable communications. So with everything sort of better explained, I really want to know, what style of communication do y'all think y'all got? Now me, honestly, I think I vacillate a lot. Like I switch between sort of adaptable to sort of like, in a sense, like this mix between sort of conflict avoiding and sort of validating. I'm a very validating person naturally, but when it comes to like a disagreement, sometimes if something is really unlogical to me, I'm gonna be so adamant that like, no, this is not da 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 da. But a lot of times, like, I will bring a topic up, but if I see that it's making the person feel like a certain way, I'll sort of retreat a little bit, even if it's something that I really need to dish out. And I'm still unlearning myself. So like anyone who listens to this and thinks like, oh, she knows what she's talking about, she's got it down. Like I'm just learning like you are. I'm sharing information along the way. Trust me, like I'm not perfect at all. Like, but I do pride myself in being, like I think I'm an effective communicator. Definitely. But I really want to know what y'all think y'all got. So maybe you guys could let me know. You can follow me on Instagram at _RoseGoldEmpathy and we can discuss this, definitely. So now that we sort of laid out these communication styles, we got to figure out like, how can we prevent communication and comprehension issues in relationships, romantic relationships specifically? So I think the first step to preventing communication and comprehension issues in your own romantic relationship is to sort of acknowledge and be aware of what your communication style even is. I think it just will help a lot with sort of this knowing that this is who I am, this is who I need to be with, etc. Right? So next, I think you need to understand that, your partner's communication style may be different from yours. So to know whether it's different or not, you got to figure out what it is. And, maybe someone's laughing, listening to this now and saying like, well, how do you figure that out? Just talk to them. You know what I mean? Like, hey, just talk to them. You don't have to ask, like, what's your communication style? You can, like, that's what I do, but you could just be, just peep game, observe. So, it even seems clear that the sort of cause of communication and comprehension issues in romantic relationships is people not being mindful of the different communication styles and preferences. Moreover, this sort of like unwillingness to compromise and see where certain things can be amplified and others muted when it comes to how we talk to each other sort of makes it even harder for things to progress. So with all of that being said, we're going to take another quick little break. And when we come back, we're going to discuss the solution to this problem. Okay. Do you love reading poetry? Do you want to expand your poetic horizons? If so, grab a copy of Caffeinated Rumination by Brianna Adams on Amazon and Kindle today. If you want a direct link to the Amazon or Kindle webpage where the book is sold, click on the link in @_RoseGoldEmpathy's bio. Thanks so much. All right, y'all. Welcome back, Roses. So, cool. Let's look at how I think communication and comprehension related issues can be prevented or even resolved so that a romantic relationship isn't ruined. So I think the most important thing to keep in mind here is that communication and comprehension styles can't be overlooked if a relationship is intended to be long term. I mean, talking comprises a large percentage of our relationships generally, perhaps even more so when it comes to romantic relationships. I mean, come on, we even have something called a talking stage. So with that, both participants or even all participants in a relationship, whether it be monogamous or poly or whatever, the way we prefer to communicate and be communicated with, to hear and to be heard, all needs to be looked at and laid out from jump. So for some reason, like there's this unspoken, intimidation with being direct about the way we want to be communicated with and loved. So if this is you, sort of scared to tell your person like how you feel for real, this is me telling you, don't be scared. Your relationship should not be a place where you feel dismissed or unheard. And a lot of the time, the person doing the dismissing or ignoring is not doing it intentionally. It just so happens to be that y'all communicate differently and y'all didn't even know that. So you guys thinking the issue is this when it's really this, you know what I mean? So I think to fix your communication issues, you need to obviously communicate them to your partner. And I also want to note that I don't agree with struggle love either. So if you keep telling your partner what the deal is and they not, catching your drift, it's time to say deuces, move on. And, I think what's more is that there are questions we can ask ourselves personally to constantly be on this road of progression towards the most effective communication style that suits our lifestyle, So these questions could be like something simple as, do I even know that I'm communicating every moment? Like, because it's not just you're talking, so you're communicating, but we just said that, we have nonverbal communication styles. We have written communication styles. Like, everything in life is a conversation, if you ask me. So we're always conversing with people. It's just the way that we converse is going to determine if we get what we want. You know what I mean? And we're always in conversation with each other. That's why people say they feel the vibe like this and like nothing really is happening. Like so much is happening that words can't capture, So you need to be like sort of mindful. Like what am I communicating to the world right now with this stance, with this head nod, with this whisper, anything. Like we're always communicating. So if we can ask ourselves like, what is it that I'm communicating, or even being aware that we are communicating, that makes so much more of a difference. And also like I said, just being aware of the different expressions of communication so you can sort of be well-rounded as it relates to yourself and others. So I think just asking myself, like, how do I think this person is communicating with me? Like, what style do I think fits them? How can I cater to their needs, right? That's the mindset I think we should sort of adopt. And I think most importantly, we should ask ourselves, like, are we always communicating what we want to communicate in the way that we want to communicate it? Like, because sometimes we'll think something is so clear and it's so easy to say, like, you're not getting me, like you got me wrong, you're not feeling me. And at the same time though, it's like, Are you making it so that you can be felt the way you want to be? You know, like, that's the problem with things like synonyms, for example. We'll say a word and then later be like, I didn't mean it like that. And yeah, you probably didn't, but now it's sort of like you said it as if it was this, and now this is what it has become as a result of that. So all of these mishaps can be prevented if we just are aware. And that's why I said awareness is such a crucial part. And it goes back to the sort of empathy and the rose gold empathy. But that's another topic, y'all. I just think like these are some questions we can ask each other and ask ourselves. So great. Let's move on to the second thing that I think ruins relationships. Deception. So I personally think that deception is the number one thing that ruins relationships, hands down in general, but especially in romantic relationships. So let us note that deception is like an untrue falsehood, right? Something that's not true. It's deception, right? That is to say that like we shouldn't automatically think of cheating as the only form of deception, because it's not. Or else I would have just said, I think cheating is the number one thing that ruins relationships, right? I think deception takes many forms, and it can be something like in the form of saying that you really love someone, but in actuality, you don't really love them that much. You love them a little bit, and you probably don't even love them. You just tolerate them because, I don't know, history or something like that. But because what they offer to you is beneficial enough, you know, you stay and you tell them that you love them when they ask, right? That's deception. You're deceiving them by claiming your love is anything more than superficial and fleeting, you know? And honestly, I think we deceive out of fear. I think deception is rooted in the fear of being straight up, because a lot of people can't handle the truth the way they want to, or the way they think they can. And like in that last example with like sort of the deceitful lover, maybe this person chooses to deceive their partner because they're afraid that if they're honest, baby, I don't really love you the same, but I have love for you maybe, or something like this, they'll be called out or broken up with or whatever. But honestly, I think relationships are ruined quicker by dishonesty than it is with honesty. You know what I mean? So how can we prevent this from ruining our relationships? Well, it seems clear to me that we have to sort of normalize telling the truth. People love the lies. Like, people say they love the truth, but people love the lies. Like, lies, like, they sort of rule society, I feel like. So much is built on some deceptive principle. I feel like deception is really praised in ways that we don't even really see on social media, to be honest. Like, for example, we see posts like, I don't care if you cheat, just don't let me find out, baby. That's mind-blowing to me. It takes a certain level of lack of self-love, or even like just a certain level of self-hate, I'd say, to sort of allow yourself to be deceived. So as long as you aren't aware and constantly knowing that this deception is taking place, So anyways, I'm offering that instead we delete posts like this and replace them with, if you're a cheater, tell me up front so I can decide if I want to be deceived in this way. Because really that's what it all goes down to with some of these relationship goals. It's like, it's going to be something foul going on in it. So let me just see which red flags I'm going to accept. And, like, even in the end, after I see the red flags and I really understand who you are, because you showed me in the beginning, but I ignored you, like, at least I can walk away and saying I chose this deception and not this deception, right? I think it's just so crazy the way our relationships are set up right now. But, yeah, of course, a cheater or a person with some sort of Stockholm syndrome to their abusive partner is probably not going to be open to this, sort of replacing the language we use. But I think honesty is the best way to combat deception. So I also want to note that sometimes the deception is not from our partners, but from ourselves. Like, there is this psychological phenomenon called pathological lying or true lies, in which someone not only deceives others constantly, but also themselves by believing whatever it is that they are using to deceive others. That's crazy, right? Like, a lot of us have been with people like this and we didn't even know it. So I think being honest with both ourselves first and then our partners is the best way to avoid deceptive issues in romantic relationships, for sure. All right, so let's move forward. Another big thing I think be ruining romantic relationships is this sort of like being overly critical of your partner. And of course, like, we all have standards, or we should all have standards by which we judge our ability to be with someone romantically or sexually or platonically or in any sense, to just connect with someone else. And I am not the only one that feels this way. So I think like standards are the thing. Like it's okay to be like, hey, no, I won't tolerate this. I won't settle for this. And I'm also not the one to say that like we should lower our standards and settle. You know, like we should have these standards. So, but, right, like I think sometimes it's so easy to sort of ease back on our own shortcomings and really nitpick the people we say we love the most. Like, I think hypercritical behavior ruins relationships very quickly and can be the most damaging for someone who is constantly being criticized. But to be honest, y'all, sometimes this hypercriticism doesn't even look like, why is your hair like that today? Or why aren't your shoes clean? Or why are you dressed like that? Or where are you going? But also, like, if I were you, it would be so much easier I wish you would just, things like this, like it's more subtle. But here's a disclaimer. I'm not saying that these phrases in and of themselves are problematic. It's just, it depends on the context. Like when they're used with a certain judging tone, or like they're constantly being forced, like as an interrogation of a partner who doesn't feel the need to sort of make a change. You know, the things are sort of trivial to them. Like, you know, my hair is like this because I like it this way. Like, why are you tripping? You know what I mean? I think this whole thing is toxic, and it's definitely like a surefire way to ruin a relationship. So how can we prevent hypercritical tendencies in relationships? After all, we only want the person we're with to be their best selves, right? Well, it's one thing to gently advise when solicited, when solicited something about something your partner does, and it's something completely different to tear them down to the point where they don't even make moves in their life for them no more, but just to please you and shield themselves from your own hypercritical comments. So I think if there's a recurrent issue that you don't see as favorable in your relationship or with your partner specifically, then you guessed it, we have to talk about it. And we got to make sure that what's being communicated is being comprehended as well. Like, don't just assume that they got you. You know what I mean? Like, it's okay to ask questions like, oh, did that make sense? Or did anything I say sound off to you? Like, what do you wish I would have clarified on? Like, these are all healthy communication tips, y'all. I need y'all to peep game and take note, take heed. We got to do better, roses. And like, this is very simple, but it's not easy by any means. So people can get discouraged when they don't see results. It's a process. So let's sort of conclude with looking at one thing that others think ruin relationships that I see pretty much as like a non-factor. So one answer I stumbled across to the question of sort of what ruins relationships is this idea that like the way someone dressing or keeping up with their hair, for example, can determine whether the relationship sink or float. And I don't deny that like this may be the case, but I think in a healthy relationship, it's really a non-factor. For example, there was this post on Instagram a couple years back which showed like a man revealing his freshly shaved beard to his fiance. And in the video, you know, she's tripping out on him. She's spazzing on him. She's in complete shock, and it turns into rage and disgust. And the video pretty much ends with her saying like, I don't even want to get married until you get your beard back. Like, why would you do this without consulting me? And while the video was clearly like dramatized for monetization purposes, you know, it's Instagram, clout chasers. But I think a lot of men and women alike share this sentiment. Like, if my partner don't look fine the way I want them to, or the way I fell in love with them to, then our relationship is over with. Like, it's finished, finito. But to me, this is kind of like superficial type stuff, because I mean, if we're with someone long term, how can we really expect them to look the same at all times? Like, so I think to avoid ruining your relationship this way, you gotta either one, find a partner that would never shave their beard or will never take their makeup off, right? Or understand that looks aren't really the only determining factor in whether a relationship will succeed or not, especially not in a healthy relationship, maybe in a toxic one. But yeah, y'all, that's pretty much all the time we have for today. I really enjoyed today's discussion because I think it's shed light on a lot of issues that we don't talk about. And I hope y'all feel the same way. Again, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, you can message me on Instagram at _rosegoldempathy. And yeah, peace out. Until next time, y'all. we have another episode coming up. I'm not going to reveal the name of it. I want to sort of keep it under the wraps a little bit because it's a very exciting topic and I want to build up the suspension for it. So until next time, roses, stay empathetic, stay up, stay strong. You guys are so smart. You're so resilient. I love y'all. And we got this. Like, this is Black excellence right here, baby. All right, y'all. Peace. How you say you love me, but you not into me? You don't even see the life that I see. The way I saw you, like Prophet with ease. Once you say you love them, they gon' start to freeze. Why you always capping? No bottled water, please. How you say you hate me, acting fond of me? We are different people. You the pond, I'm the sea. I drop a tape every day, feel like a handyman. Was trying to have you in the hills, you left me in the sand. You not done, I know you wanna do it again. Cycle never ending, I need a square plan. Why you got your hand out? Don't wanna see your hand. I be with me, myself, and I feel like I'm in a clan. Keep having deja vu, feel like I'm in a trance. Be feeling like a watch, I got two hands. You not supposed to show your upper hand. I don't know you, you is not my mans. Dodge darting, do the money dance. Chase walking, so much money in my hands.